and welcome to the Author Interrogations. I'm Bookstrovert from Bookstrovert Reviews, and today I have the honor of interviewing the fabulous author of so many incredible series, The Dead City, City Spies, Sherlock Society, the Frame series, James Ponti. Hi, James. How are you today?
Hi, it's good to see you. I'm doing good, thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. So I always start with I call it a simple question, but really it's the hardest. But
Okay.
what's your favorite book other than your own? There are so many books. That's why
Well,
I say it's
my
hard.
favorite book wouldn't be my own either. So that's an easy. It is a hard question in a lot of ways. So to me, the most important book of my life was From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler, written by E.L. Konigsberg. And that was the only, I was not a good reader as a kid, but that was the only book that really got through to me and excited me. And on my own, I read through an entire novel. I don't remember reading any other books beyond that. And I still love it today. And it heavily imprinted on me. It's set in a museum, it has a mystery. Those are elements that crop up in my stories a lot. It just really hit the hot spots of things I love. Most of my friends are writers, and I can't pick favorites among them. I adore all of them. So I love Stu Gibbs, and Stu writes the Spy School books, and so those are favorites. And Karina Glaser writes the Vanderbeeker books, and I love those. And on and on. Christina Suntorva, so I don't want to have to pick one friend over another. So I'll go with Mixed Up Files.
See, this is why it's so hard. There are
Yeah.
so many amazing books.
There are luckily a good number of them, so that's a good thing.
So let's get into the Sherlock Society. We're going to start at the very beginning. How did you come up with the idea?
So I decided a couple years ago that I wanted to write two books a year. I don't know if that was the wise decision or not, but Sherlock, City Spies was going well, and I thought it'd be nice to start up another series so that when City Spies kind of fades off, then I'll have something new. And City Spies hasn't been fading off, so now I'm doing two simultaneously, which is frying my brain a little bit, but in a good way. So I knew I wanted to write another series. I knew I wanted to do a mystery, but that was all I really knew. And so I went for a walk around the lake, just around the corner from my house where I walk my dog. And there are like 8 benches around the lake. And I came up with this thing where I sat down on a bench and I said, okay, you have to ask yourself a hard question about what you want to write, and you can't get up until you answer it. And then you have to sit at the next bench and ask a harder question, and you can't get up until you answer it. And you have to keep working your way around the lake until you figured out the book. And it took 2 laps around the lake. And it started from all I know is I want to do a mystery until I figured it out. I figured out that I knew I wanted to write kids solving mysteries in a traditional sense. So where I wanted to be different from City Spies, which has this whole element of MI6 and their spies and their jet setting around the world. So I wanted this book to feel like it fit together, but not that it was like just a slightly different variation of that.
Yeah.
So I needed to pick a place to have it. And I grew up in Florida, so I thought Florida would be a great place because there are things you know about where you grow up that are unique to that childhood experience. My problem is I grew up in a really boring part of Florida. And so I moved the story to Miami. So I took the stuff from my youth, but then I moved it to Miami. And then I had a problem, which is unlike my other series. So, Dead City and Framed take place in New York and Washington, which both have really good subway systems. And City Spies, they work for MI6, so they get transportation from MI6. I didn't have a way for them to get around. Florida does not have subways. Florida does not have good mass transit. And so I thought, how are they going to get around? Because I don't want to just have them do their neighborhood. I want to go to Little Havana and Miami Beach and the Everglades. And that's when I came up with the idea of the grandfather living with them because he would drive them around. And then that led to this whole thing about, well, what do I know about this grandfather? And I came up with the idea that he was a retired investigative reporter from the Miami Herald. And so he had a storage space filled with interviews and tapes and all kinds of things he'd done, which gave them that access to information. And once I had that, that was my second lap. I thought, I have enough to start writing. And so that's where the idea came from. I'm here in my office right now, and I can almost see the around. There's a house in between me and where came up with it, but it was a neighborhood job for sure.
That's perfect for the book. It's a neighborhood book. You get a
It
neighborhood.
is very much a neighborhood book, so it kept it all in the. And then it's funny. The other day, I was working on City Spies 7, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I thought, I'll try that trick again. And I went out and I did the benches again, and it really helped me figure out. So now I have my good luck story benches. So I guess we can't move until I've retired. So
Honestly, that's great advice because sometimes when you're just sitting at your computer or your desk and just staring, you're not going to get anywhere because you're stuck in one place. But if you like go out, take a walk, it helps.
well, it's like when you're trying to eat better, sometimes it's not good to be at home where you have like snacks. So it's good to leave the house, and it's good to get away from the keyboard so you don't start writing before you're ready to start writing.
Yeah,
So, okay, I'm close. I can get home quick. If I have something that I need to get typed quick, I can do it. But I spent like an hour and a half walking, and that helped a lot.
that was such a great answer. That was way more complicated than I thought, and it was amazing.
Okay, well, my answers are often longer, just like my books. They're longer than I intend. So that happens.
During the summer, I came to an interview that you hosted with E-Train at Avid Reader Bookstore in Davis. And at the interview, you talked a bit about your research and how you like to do very thorough research, visiting the places that the characters visit in the books. Do you have specific research routines? Like are there things that you prioritize researching first rather than others?
It's it's not prioritized, it's as needed. So I do want to get to the places when I can. Next week I will be in Paris and I'll be working on City Spy 7 while I'm there.
Wow.
So that'll be great. Um, I went to London this summer working on City Spy. So trips happen when my wife can travel and I can travel. Um, and you want to get there. So for Miami, I went, and because Miami's close enough, I could drive there. I live in Florida. Um, I did what I've never been able to do, which is after I wrote the first draft, I went to Miami and I visited every single location from the book. So like it starts off with uh, a rescue by the Marine Patrol in Biscayne Bay. I went out on a ride along with Marine Patrol into Biscayne Bay and asked them how they would do it, and did all. So wherever I can get that kind of research, that's great. This morning, again, not trying to spoil anything because, it's funny. I'm writing City Spies 7, but City Spies 6 hasn't come out yet. But I need additional research into London. And so I have an agent in London who handles international books. And I talked to her for an hour I sent her a list of like, these are 5 topics I need to discuss with you to make sure I get UK schools right, and geography right, and slang right, and home repair right, and all these kinds of things. So I like to talk to experts. And an expert to me is kind of a double thing. Like it's great if I can, like, for City Spy 6 starts in Istanbul. And so I'm lucky I have the City Spies books are translated into Turkish. So there's an editor who lives in Istanbul. So when I could talk to her about Istanbul, also she understood the books and the characters because she edits them. So for me, that's true expert, because if you and I had been to Istanbul, we could talk about it like a tourist, but she was able to talk about it like someone who understands the book and the city. So that's always great when I can get that. Um, I get a lot of travel books. I get expertise, like books on topics like subways or computer hacking or whatever. Um, and then, it's amazing how much people put on YouTube. Like, there's a moment in Sherlock Society, and I'm trying to figure out if it's book 1 or 2 because I've written book 2. So again, but it's when they're driving it. No, yeah, it's in 2. They're driving into Miami Beach. And I wanted to know, okay, at what point on the causeway that connects Miami to Miami Beach do you actually see everything that's beautiful about Miami Beach. And I found online someone just videotaped themselves driving that road. And I was able to see, oh, wait, it's not until you're halfway and you go over this big kind of hump in the causeway, and it's at the top of that causeway that you get that view that's the postcard view. So you can find stuff online. There's all kinds of ways. One time I wanted to do a thing about I had a character in Dead City who was scared of heights, but she had to ride the um, Roosevelt Island tram over the East River to get to school. And so I thought, how would she do that? And I came up with, okay, she would find a piece of music that was the exact same length as the ride, and she would get on and she would listen to she would start the music when it moved, and she would know how close she could keep her eyes closed, but she would know how close she was based on where she was in the song. And so I found someone online who videotaped the entire, so I timed out to the second how long it takes. And then I went on the music searches and I thought, okay, I need a song that is 3 minutes, 41 seconds or whatever long. And so Endless Love by Lionel Richie and Diana Ross is the exact perfect match. So that kind of research for me just helps. And then I went to Roosevelt Island and they find a body at a place that's a real place. So I had my son lie on the ground like he was a dead body, and I walked and see how far away you could be before you would see him. And the funny thing was, because it's New York, people just stepped over and walked around him. No one paid attention to the fact that this kid's acting like a dead body. He's like this
That's
13
hilarious.
this 13-year-old laying on the ground in front of but so for me, any place where I can go, and it's not just about being right. Like I want to get the facts right because I do want to get the facts right. But by riding with the Marine Patrol, you realize things that you never would have made up that are far more interesting than just having the facts right. Like, oh, when they hit a certain speed, you got to hold on, otherwise you fall back in the boat. Oh, when you drive by, he's like, oh, there's Shakira's house. Oh, there's J-Lo's house. It's like, oh wow, okay. They know, little things that I would never have imagined. So, and it's just fun. It's fun to meet people who are experts about things and talk to them. And
Yeah.
again, a much longer answer than you were looking for. I apologize.
No, I'm looking for the longest answer you
Okay,
could
well,
possibly give.
you got the right talk. Have you done this with Stu Gibbs?
No, not yet. I
Okay,
love
his
his
answers are
books.
short and on topic. He's better at this than me.
His books are great.
Yeah, they're good. They're okay. Okay, they're great. They're great.
So, getting a bit more into the writing process, you're so great at writing about groups of characters, like in City Spies. And once again, you do it with the Sherlock Society, which has four kids and their grandfather as the main characters. Can you talk a bit about how you came up with the cast of characters for the Sherlock Society? What inspired you to have siblings as the main character? You talked a bit about the grandfather, but how did you get his personality? Is that like based on someone in your life, like a favorite grandparent?
No, I don't like writing that way. Because I feel like when you base characters on people, it affects the way you create them, and it not in a good way. Because what ends up happening is, so say I based a character on my best friend. Well, I don't want to say negative things about my best friend. So all of a sudden now I'm making that character, I'm smoothing off the edges of things. And I certainly don't want bad things to happen to them. So it's like, okay, I'm not gonna, and so I try to resist that. And instead, what I do is I take traits from people and I take traits from myself, and mostly from myself. So, for instance, when I came up with the City Spies characters, I started with 5 kids. Now there's 6 kids on the team. But when I started, is I took my 5 biggest difficulties from middle school, and I gave each of them one of those difficulties. So Paris had my sense of fear of disappointing people, and Rio had my feeling of being the youngest and being overlooked, and and that way it starts with, I don't want to say a problem, but it starts with a conflict already. And then you try to build a character out that makes sense with that. So for this, I wanted to write, it's funny. And so I never knew my father. I was raised by my mother, and I had no contact at all with my father. And that really imprinted on me. And then the books that I wrote, the first 11 books I wrote, all have a missing parent. And it's kind of psychology 101 that you just kind of put that in there. And so Molly in Dead City, her mom has died, and in the frame it's adopted, and she wants to find out about her birth parents. And in City Spies, it's actually the reverse, is that we're with the dad and he's trying to find the kids, but also the kids he finds aren't with their parents, right? So I had done a lot of that. And that helps me work out this stuff in my head that is interesting to work out. And I decided on this one, I wanted to write about not the family where I was the kid, but the family where I was the parent. And so the Sherlock Society is based on the dynamics of the family that my wife and I raised. And so I wanted, both parents and stable, good, happy parents. I didn't want to do that thing where it's like they're motivated by something to do. The parents are positive and the parents are involved. And then I thought, well, siblings are good. So I would like siblings. And even though I was one of all boys, I thought it'd be fun to do a brother sister. And so we start with that. And then it just kind of is like, well, the sister's going to be reluctant. So he needs someone on his side. So that'll be his best friend. So we'll have, okay, brother, sister, best friend. And I knew I wanted four. And it's just from a writing technique, it's always super advantageous to have someone new in the first book of a series or the first episode of a TV show or in a movie, someone who basically represents the reader. So they have to be, everything has to be explained to them, but has to be explained to the reader. So you're not having two people who know each other say, "Oh, that's my Uncle Bob." It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I've lived with you my whole life. I know Uncle Bob, right? And so that's where I brought Lena in. And so now I have, and I want them to be different. And the real difference that I wanted to do here, based on, like when I was growing up, in every movie, in every book, the goal was to be cool, right? And so books would be about nerds who found their coolness. And I wanted to do the opposite of that. I wanted the geekier, nerdier sibling to be happy with who he was in life, and the popular one
Yeah.
to be unhappy. And because I think that's actually more accurate.
I
And he's at peace with who he is and revels in his nerdiness at times because the people in his life are really in his life. And she is ill at ease in hers because there's so much superficiality around it, but she doesn't want to let go of it. So I'm thinking not about, oh, this is like so and so that I knew growing up, but I'm thinking about dynamics of how characters get along and and who's rooting for who and who's helping who. And then grandpa became a key. So it's not really based on my mother, but my mother lived with us the last like 4 years of her life. And it was funny to see how she was as a grandmother versus how she was as a mother. She was much more free and open and rule breaking as a grandmother. And I thought I think that's a common dynamic. And so the grandpa is everything I wish I was. Like he has a freeness about him and a confidence about him that I wish I had about myself. And he's really, to me, the difference maker in this book series because he's a central character and he's 73 years old, but it's not like, oh, this is my sickly old grandfather who is a motivator in the story because we have to visit him because he's weak.
yeah.
He's out there in some ways leading the charge. Yeah. So that dynamic, and it's different than writing a single book. When you're writing a series, at the beginning, you are trying to build characters that you feel like can grow and expand and change, and whose dynamics with each others can change over the course of multiple books. So that's also what I was trying to build.
I personally love the grandpa. He's
Yeah.
hilarious. I love his car and how protective he is of it. It's so funny.
Here's his car. I keep it on my desk,
Oh my God, that's
so
amazing.
I can whenever I need inspiration.
In one of my other all-time favorite series, City Spies, you switch the focus to a different character in every book. Do you anticipate doing anything like that for the Sherlock Society?
No. So with City Spies, early on, we made that decision, my editor and me, that we would do that. Um, because a spy book to me really works well the way I write if it's written in third person. Because I need to be able to show multiple people with different points of view. I need to sometimes show the bad guys
Yeah.
or whatever or the so what happens when you have a first person narration, there's advantages you get with it. Usually it can humor. I like the humor in that. I like the voice of one of the characters. So with City Spies, I had that possibility to jump around from character to character. Again, I wanted the two series to read different and feel different for readers, but also for me, writing two books a year, you kind of sort those different places in your head. So I wanted this to be a first person narration, which, unless I'm going to change the narrator from book to book, which then changes the voice of the book, which I'm not a big. See, the voice of City Spice doesn't change, even though the characters do. The protagonist does. Um, it just feels like it needs to always be Alex's narration, which means everything that happens in the story needs to be something he sees. With the exception of book two has three chapters written in third person about Grandpa when he was 12. And we see where Grandpa's love of mystery and writing start, and he stumbles across a mystery 61 years ago that they don't solve until now.
Yeah.
And so, but for that kind of change up, I felt I could do that. It's just a few chapters, but I think so it won't change. This is it is everyone's story, but Alex is always going to be our storyteller.
Speaking of book two, when you were writing book one, did you know where you wanted the story to go as you got farther
No
on?
idea. I'm not that smart. Smart authors do that. I do not. I knew that I was probably going to write a hurricane in book two, and I did, just because that's such a Florida thing,
Yeah.
and it's such a great dynamic component to a story. And then weirdly, I was doing the rewrite when a hurricane actually came through where I told my wife, I said, I have to go rewrite part of that tonight while the hurricane is here. So when I go on school visits next year, I can tell kids I wrote the hurricane scene during a hurricane. And so it's true. I had already written, but the rewrite I did it while there was hurricane and rain and racing to get it
Yeah.
some done before the power went out. Because inevitably when a hurricane comes, you're going to lose power at some point. Luckily, we did
That's
this until 5 a.m.
that's the best author fun fact I've
There
ever.
we go.
A
There we go.
hurricane during a
Oh,
hurricane.
I have another great author fun fact for you that is a real head scratcher in unlikeliness. We didn't know it until recently, but Kate DiCamillo and I both worked at Disney World at the same time when we were in college.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
there's the chance that as we walk around in the behind the scenes area at Disney, we had, although she was at Epcot and I was at Magic Kingdom, but you still crossed over some. And so Kate and I figured that out at a book festival last year.
What a small world.
But neither of us worked on Small World. That wasn't the ride we worked on. But yes, that is, if it worked on Small World, then it would have been the ultimate. What a small world to work on
Yeah.
in Small World with Kate DiCamillo. Yeah.
We've kind of been touching on this throughout the interview, but you've written so many series. When you are overlapping or writing multiple at once, how do you differentiate in your brain moving from one manuscript to the other with the voice of the book, the characters, etc.?
I try to have natural breaks. So the goal is I usually go out on a book tour when a book comes out. And the goal is to let that book tour be the separation between the writing. So like for 7 days or 14 days, I'm not going to really be writing because I'm going from city to city. And then when I come back, my brain's kind of just mush, so it's an easier time to. Sometimes the problem becomes in the rewrite. Like I've been trying to write Cities by Seven, but I had to go back and do some changes to Sherlock 2. But they're different enough
Yeah.
that I'm able to do it. I wish there was like a real skilled way. There's still sometimes using the different voice makes a difference. If both were first person or both were third person, I think I would have more difficulty doing the switch.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of the book tours, so personally, I love supporting my local bookstore. And another thing that you talked about at the Avid Reader bookstore interview was once the book had been published, you like to go to a lot of locally owned bookshops and do interviews like the one I participated in. What's your favorite bookstore in your community, and why is visiting local bookshops so important to you?
Okay, I will never pick a favorite writer or a favorite bookstore because that's just not a smart way. I love the concept of independent bookstores. And I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of Barnes and Noble too. I mean, I love people. I think they work better together than they used to. They used to be more competitive, but indie bookstores are like hold like the most special place in my heart because what those are is they're local. They're that's where someone finds a book that's not famous,
Yeah,
right? You go into a place and someone says, "Oh, well, if you like that, then come let me show you this," and it's I do this thing every year where I send a card to 400 independent bookstores across the country. In fact, my wife's in the other room putting stamps on the envelopes so we can drop them in the mail this week. Um, it's amazing how many of them are on Main Street in their different cities. Like it is the classic kind of Main Street business, and some of them are new, and a lot of them have been there for decades. And for years and years, people have come and they've just nurtured the writing life in that town. And because they're not big and corporate, and because they're not, you know, also they're really it's a tailor-made experience, the books that are interesting in there, the books that are, and I just like going out, just like when I travel, when I travel and I travel a lot, my main rule is I don't ever want to eat in a chain restaurant because I could do that anywhere. I want to eat at the place that is truly, oh, if you're in Detroit, you got to eat here, or if you're in Sacramento, you got to eat here. And it's for the same reason. The bookstore is the same way. It's like you get that local, special, unique experience. And I have been to, in the last year, at least 60 different independent bookstores, say. And
that's the dream. That's
they're
amazing.
all dramatically different from each other. It's just, you would think that, oh, okay, they're going to fall into a certain, there's like four types. Just, no, they're all different. And they all have a different vibe. You go up to Wild Rumpus in Minneapolis, and they've got like six animals that live in the store, right? And you go, I was just at I was, God, I'm going to blank on names. I don't want to blank on names. There's a couple stores that I've been to where they have small doors for kids and big doors for grown-ups. There are stores you go to where they have a book club that meets every week. There's store, all these kinds of things, and they're all just built by people not who like to sell things, but people who love books.
Yeah,
And so it's not like some businesses which are about selling, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you go to the hardware store, I don't want to knock any business. You go to the hardware store, they're selling you things. You go to a bookstore, they're sharing their love of something, right? They're trying to get you, oh no, this is the book that I love. And they read them and they know them, and it's just great.
yeah, I agree. Whenever like you go to a big bookstore like Barnes and Noble, it's so fun to see so many books
Yeah,
and you can be like, "Oh, I've read that one. I've read that one. I've read that one." But when you go to a local bookshop, you really find new like treasures that you can then
right.
go and say, "Oh, wait, now I've read
It's
them."
manageable. It's like you see it and it's manageable.
Yeah.
And in the ecosystem of what we do, we need all of it. We need all the ways for people. Not every community can support. an independent bookstore,
Yes.
which is a shame. But it's, you need a certain number of people and you need people willing to pay, you know, not just that aren't just interested in the cheapest books and the most famous books. You need a place where they want that. And then you get you get Seattle. Seattle has something like 14 independent bookstores, and I went to 10 of them, and each one will take your breath away. And you can't believe this city has all of them. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so switching topics a bit, I always like to ask, do you have any advice for aspiring writers and unpublished authors?
Sure, I have lots of it. So,
I'll take it all.
writing is a wonderful thing to do. It's fun. It feels great. You get to examine things. You get to go on adventures in your head, all kinds of great things. It is problematic if you write only because you have this expectation of being published. And I say that because that's still a hard thing to do, and it's a lot of work to do. And if the only reason you're doing it is for that payoff at the end, it's frustrating if it doesn't happen. So I really, I like to encourage people to be creative, but I like them to be, and I think there's all kinds of ways to get your story out. We lived in, I when I was growing up, I was film was the bigger thing for me. I went to film school in college, and it used to be there was only one way to get a movie out. Now you can make videos, you can put them online. There's all kinds of things, and there's all kinds of things with books. So getting off out of your head that, well, this is only going to be worth my effort, and I'm going to be miserable if it doesn't get published by a major publisher and become a New York Times bestseller, then I would say be cautious because those are all kind of hard things, but those are all doable things, but they're hard things. But for writing's sake, there is no job on earth that you won't do better if you're good at writing. If you're not good at if you're good at communicating ideas. So developing writing skills is always a great thing. The best part of it to me is people can write better books than me. People may not like my books, but the one thing I know, no one but me could write the books that I write. And that's the singular experience of what we do when you're creative. If you have a story and you have a voice that is unique to you, both those things are unique to you. And so when you put that story in that voice, it is different than anyone else's. So you've created something that wouldn't exist otherwise. And that's a wonderful feeling. And that's a wonderful power. Now, when you write, you have to, even if it doesn't get published, you have to share it, you have to show it to people. So acknowledging the fact that what you have to write and share is good and special, that's the first thing. Then what you write should be good and special. You should write about something to you. That doesn't mean it has to be serious, doesn't mean it has to have a tragic ending or this ending, but you should write about something that you care about, even if it's humor, even if it's mystery, even if it's whatever that means something to you, because that's the enrichment of writing, is you're looking at something. So I write spy stories and mysteries that to me are really about families and friendship and things that really matter to me. And then the spy story and the mystery is just an excuse to do things with that family and that friendship. That's what I enjoy writing. Um, when you write, the most important skill to have is finishing. I think a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, I love to write. I got 6 novels going right now," which is not good because that means you're coming up with ideas, but you're not seeing them through, which would be like if you were throwing footballs, but there wasn't someone to catch them, right? The completion is doing the whole thing. And the reason we do that, I think, is it's not perfect and we're frustrated. So maybe if I start again, I'll get something perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But if it doesn't finish, then you can't call you become a writer once you finish things. So what I recommend a lot of times is start with smaller things. Write a poem, write a short story, write a novella, write a song, write something that is you can complete. And then you can go back and you can rewrite it. And then you can say, you know what, I'm done with this for a while. I'm going to start something new. And then write that and complete that. And you can have 2 things going. But beyond 2, I think you're lying to yourself if you think that's a good thing. right? So come up and finish things. As far as nuts and bolts, it's really good to have a place where you write. That's kind of a dedicated place. That doesn't mean it's the only place, like the only thing that can happen there is writing, but it's a place that you go to for serious writing. So for me, this desk in my house, looking out the window at the front yard of the street, that's where I write 98% of everything I write. And when I sit here in this chair, I'm being serious about it. Now I do this for a living, so that's obviously a different level of commitment. But having a place is good because it helps your mind get in your body, get in the mindset of now we're working, now we're writing. And I am going to make myself sit here for at least 30 minutes and write, which if you're scratching in a notebook, that said, there's a guy named Jeff Zentner, a writer. He writes young adult primarily, and Jeff wrote. He would write on his phone. I don't know how he did that on as he commuted to his job as an attorney on the bus, and he would get on the bus for an hour each way and write 2 hours a day that way. But that was his writing place. So finding a place is good. When you write, I'm a huge fan of reading it all out loud. I constantly read everything out loud because when you hear it, first of all, it helps your dialogue be much better because your tongue will get tripped up on the stuff that's not right. But also it helps you catch grammar and mistakes, but also it helps you feel the flow of the story. When you read, you can scan, you can go you speed up, you can do whatever. But when you read out loud, you have to read it at the pace of the story being told. So all of those are things. And then have a couple people who can look at a story and give you constructive criticism. So that doesn't mean just rip it to pieces, but also doesn't mean just always, oh, this is amazing. Someone can say, you know what, this is really good, but I think you got that. So there's a lot in there. Write with passion, write in your voice, read out loud, write in the same place, try to finish things, have someone you can rely on. That's 6 tips.
Those are some great tips. Thank you so much. I'm sad we're coming to the end of our interview. I have one last question, but
Sure.
this is a great, happy question. What's next in the world of James Ponti?
So I am locked in a very good way for the next 3 years that every February, a new City Spies book will come out, and every September, a new Sherlock Society book will come out. And so that's a lot of writing ahead. And so I am going back and forth from them and really, for it's only recently during the course of the City Spies books that I've just dedicated myself to writing, where before I always had a job in television and I wrote at night and on the weekends. That's how I wrote the first two City Spies books. But now I really get to live the life of an author, and it's so much fun. So much fun. So what's next is I will keep writing books as long as people will read them. So hopefully there's some people out there that will keep reading for a while because I don't feel like slowing down anytime soon.
I will definitely be a part of those people reading
Oh,
your
oh,
books.
I'm gonna keep writing beyond when you're gonna want to read my books. You're gonna go off and do all kinds of grown-up stuff, and which is great. But you know what? Those books will always be there for you if you want a little, just like, I still love to listen to the music that I listened to in high school because not only do I love that music, but it takes me back
Yeah,
and I feel like I felt in high school. And I feel that way about books sometimes that, the books that you loved at a certain age hopefully always be dear to you. And
that's
if
kind of
any of
how it is for me with Framed. I read those when I was obviously younger than I am now, but much younger than I am now. And then I read City Spies, and now I'm reading the Sherlock Society. And so when I listened to the Frame audiobooks on repeat for like a week straight, like over and over and over again once I found them. And so whenever I listen to the audiobook, it reminds me of when I was like really little listening to
yeah.
that. And now I can read City Spies and it's me now. And then Sherlock Society. And it's like a whole
Well,
change.
that's kind of the goal. So did I tell you then that Framed has the new covers? Have you seen the new covers for Framed?
I have not.
So Framed will have new covers starting
Ooh,
in May.
that's so cool. Hold
So
on,
what we
get a
what we
closer look.
what we did is we decided to have the woman who does the covers for Sherlock and City Spies to go back and do those covers too, so they all kind of fit together.
Yeah, they're unified.
They're different but similar enough that they belong.
Yeah.
What I love is to me, Framed is about what does it mean to be someone's best friend, and these covers show that.
Yeah. I love how you can see details from the book, and once you've read the book, you can go back to the cover
Isn't
and
that
be
great?
like,
She did
oh
such a
wait,
good
oh
job.
wait. Yeah.
She did
Oh wow,
such a
that's
good
amazing.
job with that. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, sad to say, our interview is coming to a close. Thank you so much for coming on, James. I'm
Thank you. I'm sorry
thrilled
it took
to
so
have
long
talked
for
to
us to
you.
get together, but I'm glad that we did. And I'm really glad you listened to Frame a bunch. I hope
I
that
love
it,
them.
I hope that Florian is very special to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have ever been, I don't know, emotional is the right word. I felt really bad when I was towards the end of the third book in Framed at what I did to their. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but there was a time when things were not all rosy between Florian and Margaret, which I thought was important to do, but it's like it broke my heart.
Yeah.
It broke Florian's heart so much, and um yeah, that's why people are, oh, what's your favorite book you wrote? I don't have one. They all are the best I could do at the time I was doing them, and they all, because I believe in you write about something that matters to you, they all really matter to me.
Yeah.
And so um it's nice to know that they matter to other people too.
They're amazing. I love them very
Thank
much.
you
It
so much,
broke my
folks.
heart when I was first reading it, when I heard
Oh, it's
the book.
terrible.
It's
It's
horrible.
just, it's terrible.
If
Yeah.
listeners, if you have not read the Framed books and you've read City Spies, obviously if you've read something of James Ponti, if you're listening, you must go back and read Framed. They're
Yeah, it's
great.
yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, and thank you, listeners, for listening.
Thank you.
If
It's great to
you
talk to you,
want,
bookstore. And just like I love independent bookstores, I love people like you who take their passion for books and make it into something more than a solitary event, that it's a shared event. Because the great surprise of books for me, when I went from TV to books, I was happy to do it, but my fear was that it would be lonely and that I would be in this room by myself and that would be everything. And it's anything but lonely.
yeah,
Because of people like you, because of the other authors, because of the booksellers, because of the librarians, because of this community that just celebrates what's wonderful in books, just the
yeah.
idea of it's wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. This was such a great interview. If listeners would like to find more interviews from Author Interrogations, you can find that on Spotify and YouTube, or you can check out my website, bookstrovert.reviews.com, or my Instagram at bookstrovert.reviews. And where can listeners find you, James?
You can go to jamesponti.com. On X, I'm at James Ponti. Instagram, I'm at James Ponti Books, and on Blue Sky, I think it's at James Ponti.
I'm about to sign up.
There you go.
Excited. Okay, well, thank
It
you
is
so much.
such a big book community on Blue Sky. That's kind of fun for
Yeah,
books. Yeah. All right.
thank
You
you.